Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining us tonight with creature and droid performer Tom Wilton. Tom, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today. Would you like to answer some questions about how you started your career as a droid and creature performer?
Yeah, so I suppose specifically the creature performance and the sort of droid work started on Star Wars, and The Force Awakens was my first feature film. So really, you know, Star Wars is where it all began for me. I have a background in puppetry and physical theatre, and so I suppose that's what led me to Star Wars in that sense. But really, yeah, the beginning for me of this type of work was The Force Awakens, which is now more years ago than I care to say.
Last week.
Yeah, it's last week. It was last week that we were in the desert in Abu Dhabi, and yeah.
So how did you end up getting cast for the Star Wars movies? Was that a process of something you'd had from previous experience, or was it a new casting, or how did that come about?
Yeah, so I was very lucky, really. I think at the time I thought I'd missed the boat. So I was touring with the Walking with Dinosaurs Arena World Tour at the time. And in amongst the sort of the London puppetry circles, there began to kind of circulate rumors that Star Wars was coming to London. And being a lifelong a lifelong fan of the franchise, I was sort of desperate to be involved, but I thought because I was away, I'd missed the boat. And then it just so happened that a role kind of came up, and my name was on two different lists that had been given to Brian Herring, who was coordinating the sort of the creature puppetry for Neil Scanlon. And and Brian gave me a call, and I went in and had this absolutely surreal experience of going around the workshop, and at that point not really having been told what it was, but also knowing but not really knowing. So walking around the workshop and seeing like R2-D2 over here, and thinking, oh my goodness, this is Star Wars. And then I was fitted into this kind of skeletal at that stage. It was really just a skeletal shell for what would go on to be the Luggabeast. And so I got fitted inside that with Derek Arnold, and we had a little move around in it, and then left kind of not really knowing if I was going to be involved, or if I was going to be invited back. I have now come to realize that that's the nature of the film industry. No one ever tells you you've got the job. You know, if they don't ask you back, then you know you haven't got the job. But if no one says anything, then you're good. So yeah, and so from that process onwards, we began the research and development sort of phase for these two creatures, the Luggabeast and the Happer-Boar. Again, the Happer-Boar was in its early stages at that sort of time. Derek and I were focusing specifically on the Luggabeast, but the two creatures were existing on Q Stage at Pinewood Studios, where we were rehearsing. And then no one ever really said, "Hey, you're coming to Abu Dhabi to do this thing." It just sort of happened, and then we found ourselves there in the desert in this village, this Star Wars village, kind of looking around, going, okay, this is Star Wars. It was from start to finish, really, it was an extraordinary and surreal experience.
Must have been nice and cool in that costume as well.
Well, do you know what? Actually, it wasn't too bad, because at least we were sheltered from the sun. But I do remember that I did a lot of prep, having come straight off of the Dino tour. I was a lot fitter back then, and I was in a kind of routine of sort of specifically working out for creature performance. So so I thought, right, okay, I know what I need to do for this. You know, it's a heavy creature. I need to lift heavy. So I was down the gym and I was doing all sorts of squats and deadlifts and things. And I was even going, I found a local sauna, and I was going to this little one-person sauna and getting in there and doing like hot yoga and trying to get acclimatized for the heat. So I felt pretty good. I felt pretty prepared until we got there, and then it just the heat just absolutely just saps your energy. And you take 2 steps in this thing and you think that's it, that's all I've got, you know. Fortunately, I had Derek behind me, sort of, you know, cheering me on and kind of literally pushing me forwards, and that's how we got through it.
Cool.
Yeah, us Europeans are not made for that, frankly.
No, I don't think we are, but sometimes we're either, you know, brave enough or stupid enough to say yes to these things.
That's true. So what's your favorite character or costume that you got to portray over the years in your career?
You know, it's tricky. I think each of them represent sort of different things for me, and they all, because we were shooting these 5 films across such a large period of time, they all represent different sort of times in my life, and they mean different things to me. But I think the Luggabeast will be up there in my top 3, just because it was such an extraordinary experience, and it was my first experience on Star Wars, really. And then I think Ponda Baba is a fave of mine, just because of the nature of the legacy character. And I think, again, I was somewhat disbelieving that I was going to be doing this character. Had a fantastic time shooting it. Loads of great support from the creature team. As always, they're wonderful and professional, and it's a joy to work with them every time. And then I suppose, building on that, it's got to be Aftab Akbar, because again, the connection to legacy, but also the experience itself was really unique, because I was very fortunate in that we rehearsed all of the scenes. I got to rehearse all the scenes with the head off. So there I was, kind of acting alongside all of these major players in Star Wars, and that was both a unique and utterly terrifying experience. And then, of course, the head would go on, and the wonderful Patrick Comfort would take over in regards to the dialogue and the facial puppetry for the animatronic. And again, that link and that friendship and that bond with Pat, and also with Claire Roy Harvey as well, who also at times was doing the Aftab's mouth as well. It's a really it's a really special bond that you develop, because you're in it together and you have to work together, and it's not without its challenges. And when you get through it, of course, there's an enormous sense of satisfaction at the end.
For sure, it really pays off, because it's just so much more real.
Yes. Yeah, and that head, the Aftab Akbar head, just fantastic. The animatronics were designed and built by Gustav Hogan, and he's just one of the best in the world. And it's always a joy to work with his animatronic heads, and it moved so beautifully. Also, it was light, and although you're always limited in terms of your vision inside these things, but that one gave me just enough to be able to take some risks as well, to feel like I could be brave with some of my movements. And so it was a real joy to do that one.
It's interesting you say about some of the stuff that goes on with the characters and the masks. I mean, you obviously got a relationship with this guy. I've got a relationship with this guy. So it's one of my costumes. You know, what was it like when you found out you got to play? Because he's a legacy, but he's a bit of an iconic character in the Star Wars universe. So when you get a chance to play someone like Ponda Baba, how was it? You know, how did you find out about it, and what was it like when they told you this is going to be your little cameo? And you've got this blue mug that you're going to be playing with.
Yeah. Well, generally speaking, we tend to hear these things from the workshop first. So, we might be walking, we might be going in to be fitted for something else, and someone will say, "Oh, have you heard? Look over there. This particular thing is being sculpted around your head cast." So you have a little look and you go, oh my goodness, that I think that's Ponda Baba, and then when it was like, okay, yeah, this is happening, then there was this kind of process of the costume and the head, and standing there in front of Gareth Edwards and him kind of walking around and sort of looking at me and kind of going, okay, and and this sense of uncertainty and honestly, if I'm being completely honest, me worrying that I was too short to play the character, and me kind of when you're inside a head, often it's very here, and you'll appreciate this, Mark, sometimes it's very hard to hear what people are saying. So I was kind of trying to earwig and kind of go, right, okay, what are they talking about, and sort of this sense of like nervousness and anxiety about, oh no goodness, he's going to cut me because I'm too short, and in the end, actually, they did actually build up they built up the boots that I was wearing, so I had a false heel inside it. So I was kind of higher than I would normally be, which then kind of tips your center of gravity forward a bit. So then with the animatronic head, I remember kind of having to kind of fight that a bit. And then the filming itself was, I mean, the nature of the way that Gareth wanted to shoot on Rogue One was that it was quite frenetic, and it was very authentic. It was real, and he liked it to be quite busy, and for it not to feel like a film set, for it actually to feel authentic. And so we shot that little cameo sequence in this absolutely jam-packed little kind of alleyway, and I had the head on for about 5 seconds, and within 5 seconds, the goggles inside had fogged up, and I was thinking, I can't see a thing in this head, and I'm having to kind of, negotiate all of these extras that are bustling down this busy street, and then obviously have that exchange with Felicity and Michael, and I'm pretty much being blind, but seeing dull shapes moving on the left and the right. And I do remember a couple of times I remember taking a shoulder from a couple of supporting artists, not knowing if that was my fault or theirs, and just being like, I've just got to carry on, I've just got to soldier on and get this done. But yeah, it was, and then of course, you do these things, and then there's the uncertainty of whether or not it's going to make the cut as well.
Yeah.
So then you try not to think about it. It's a little bit like, when you're, as an actor, you go to auditions, and the advice is always, as soon as you walk out the door, just forget about it. Try not to dwell too much on what's happened. So you try not to, but at the same time, with something as kind of important as playing Ponda Baba, there was that period of time before the film was released, kind of going, oh my goodness, am I going to make the cut? Am I going to make the cut? And the reason why I say that was because we did shoot some other stuff with Ponda as well, stuff which I felt would be alternates. So I was like, okay, like this could go and it might not. And then when the market scene did go in, I was super pleased. The whole thing was kind of bonkers, really, from start to finish.
It's really nice to hear that you've got something that we suffer with when we're out in costume, whether at a convention or doing something else, about the fogging up of the lenses. And that's nice to hear that they even get that on film sets. That's just a nice one. Sorry, Daisy.
I remember waking up at 6 a.m. in the morning to join my local garrison to watch Rogue One for the first time together in a rented out movie theater. And I remember distinctively the first time we saw Ponda Baba again on the screen, everybody stood up and clapped and cheered so loud because everybody was so happy with the cameo. And I really, really do not think that if you hadn't stumbled and bumped into people, it would have come across as well as it did. So well done, man.
Oh, thank you. Oh, that's so lovely to hear. That's so encouraging, because that's so nice to hear, because I think, you know, often with these things, I mean, obviously Ponda Bab is slightly different, but you know, in terms of the creature performers on Star Wars, you know, we've done so many different creature characters, and you know, it's not the easiest. It is hard work, and often I think sometimes when you're doing background creature characters, you can labor away and feel as though perhaps it's not appreciated. But to hear that is really great, and really encouraging. So thank you.
Why do you think practical creatures on puppetry makes it more realistic than CGI, which is kind of hot, but recently has been drawn?
Yeah, I think we've seen this absolutely fantastic resurgence in practical effects in the film business, and I you know, I feel as though really, you know, it feels to me like it stems from the Force Awakens, and JJ being so pro practical effects, and it takes a director who has a passion for these things to implement them, because they are not the easiest. They do take time, and they do take planning, and at times it is easier just to go down a visual effects route. It's certainly quicker in that regards. And obviously, as a puppeteer, you know, I work very much between the two mediums. So I work as a practical puppeteer, but I also work as a VFX puppeteer as well. And I really appreciate both the mediums. But I think there is just something about. I think the eye is an extraordinary thing, and it senses falsehood, and I think that, you know, for me, there are only a handful of things personally for me, which from a VFX standpoint, I've watched and felt as though I could really be immersed and forget that I was watching a computer generated image, and be immersed in the story. And it's something that I think as long as things are shot in a certain way, I think it's a bit easier to find that authenticity with practical effects, because your brain or your eye isn't having to get over the hurdle of trying to. It's that willing suspension of disbelief, I think.
Yeah, the uncanny valley.
Yeah, the uncanny valley, exactly. When you're seeing that thing, when you're seeing that practical effect on the screen, your eye knows it was there. It knows it's real, and I think it senses it somewhere, you know, whether, you know, you're not overtly thinking and feeling that, but somewhere intrinsically inside you, I think you sense that as a human. Whereas I think with the visual effects, you know, there's always that slight moment of, and I suppose it's you know, it's tricky for me as well, because, you know, having worked in the film industry, you know, there are certain things that I'm going to be looking out for, but I do find myself normally when I'm watching something which is heavily CG, the first thing I'm doing is kind of going, okay, how good is this? How good is this CG? Right. Okay. Well, that's pretty good. It's not too bad. Or no, that's not very good. And if I'm thinking that, then that instantly, that is me. That's one step removed from allowing myself to get immersed in the storyline. It's a bit of an impediment, I think. So I think that would be one of the reasons why I think practical effects is so loved. I suppose, along with the fact that I think for a lot of people, there is a huge nostalgic kick from watching practical effects, because it takes us back to being kids and to that golden era of our childhood where there were so many wonderful things coming out. And yeah, we were spoiled for choice at that time.
But it also makes it possible to actually, at some point, if you're privileged enough, to actually see and touch and smell things that you've seen as a child. And I think it makes it so much more real. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, like there's no denying that the reactions that you get from actors, or just generally people, anyone that comes in does a set visit and gets to come to the Creature Marquee and see the amazing artistry that is on display there, or any of the actors that get to act opposite these things. I mean, John Boyega, for instance, is a huge fan of the creatures. I mean, every time we'd have a scene with John, he'd be coming over and sort of looking at it and like prodding it and being really excited by it. And they elicit this kind of excitement, because you're about as close as you're ever going to get to looking a real alien face to face, aren't you? Really, I mean, it's pretty cool and crazy. Yeah.
So you're now part of this massive worldwide family of thousands of actors and performers across Star Wars. What's your fondest memory of working on Star Wars? And I'll say to date, because you never know what might be coming up in the future. But what's your fondest memory of working on Star Wars?
Oh boy, there are so many, and as I say, they punctuate different times in my life, and I think. And that family issue is a really important one as well, because I think that there is that Star Wars family, there is the wider community who I now feel like I'm part of, and then there is, of course, my on-set family of the Creature team, who when you work so closely with a group of people, you become very, very dear friends, and they all mean an enormous amount to me. And also, you live through these extraordinary experiences, and it really kind of galvanizes those friendships. And then in regards to a sort of another part of family is that, my sons who have seen these films for the first time in their lives in a cinema, and that experience. Like I was in New York when The Last Jedi came out, and I was there with my son Henry, and I took him to see it. And this was the first time that he'd seen a Star Wars film in the cinema, and it just blew his tiny mind. Like he was already a huge fan, but to see it on the big screen, like he lived every single emotion in that film. Like he was leaping out of his seat, and he was running up and down the aisles, and he was having the best of time. So family, Star Wars and family means a lot to me. But to sort of to pin it down, I suppose, there are just some really bizarre moments, like like being on the peninsula in Ireland with Derek Arnold stuck inside the sea cow for like 5 hours. I mean, that's got to be one of my fondest memories, because I think we went slightly mad. We went pretty crazy. We talked and Derek and I, we had this kind of, we haven't done it for a while. Actually, we need to pick up from where you left off, but we had this sort of YouTube channel called The Drive-In with Tom and Derek, where we just chat nonsense. We used to car share on the way to Pinewood, so at kind of 5 o'clock in the morning, one of us would pick the other one up, and then we would drive to Pinewood, and we would just chat nonsense. And being stuck inside the sea cow became like an extended episode of that for us, but it just got weird and surreal, and it was like listening to two grown men descend into madness. It was a really strange experience, but yeah, great. So yeah, that stands out. I mean, shooting, oh wow, the stage that we shot the Rebel stuff on for the Rise of Skywalker, for the scenes that where I was playing Aftab Akbar, the most scenes that I shot as Akbar on that kind of set. That set was, I mean, just the most extraordinary set I've ever been on. It was totally immersive. So once you had to kind of walk on around these little kind of corners of rocks to kind of get into it, and then when you were in it, you looked around and you could not see, there was nothing there to tell you that you were on a film set. It was totally immersive, and having that Hammerhead spaceship that was fully there, I mean, it was actually there, and it was, I mean, as far as I'm aware, I'm assuming it's the largest practical spaceship that they had built at that stage.
Wow.
I mean, possibly, you know, I know with the Falcon, there were sections of it, and they did have a full version of it at one stage, but the Hammerhead just felt absolutely enormous, and there were people up there inside it. Like there were people on the deck, and there were people pretending to be welding things inside cubby holes and stuff hanging off the edge of it. It was just, oh man, it was just like that. The boy inside you who loves Star Wars just kind of goes, hey, I'm in Star Wars. Like there's no pretending. It's like, this is it, I'm here, you know. Yeah, but I mean, I could go on. I mean, they're each of the films, I think, you know, you probably in each of them you have a moment which is in turn both surreal and exciting. And then you have those times as well where you know, you just have to kind of set your jaw and get down to it and do the hard work as well. So yeah, but I think probably those two, instantly as you asked that, Mark, those two probably the two that jumped out for me. Yeah.
Thanks.
So you mentioned a lot of different scenes that you've shot, but what is the longest one that you have ever shot?
Oh, that's a really good question. So takes generally tend to be quite short. But in terms of sequences, I do remember that the shooting Mimbam for Solo on the 007 stage at Pinewood, that kind of felt like, yeah, I think we did 2 consecutive weeks on it, and then I think we had a little bit of a break, and then we came back and we did another week, or perhaps even 2 weeks. And again, that started to feel like Groundhog Day a bit, that sequence, because Derek and I were stuck inside this crab droid kind of thing, which was, I suppose, I think the idea was it was like a kind of Imperial mule droid, you know, it kind of humped and lumped ammo and stuff about the place for the soldiers. But I mean, that was an extraordinary set. I mean, you know, you could barely see like a foot in front of you, because it was like filled with this like dark gray smoke, and there were things exploding left, right, and center. And Derek and I were just kind of sort of stuck inside this crab droid, kind of face to face in this kind of low squat, doing this kind of sideways kind of walk, kind of through this battle zone, like hearing all these things kind of blowing up either side of us. And I do remember there was one time when we did a lot of takes, and we had to reset. So you know, you'd shuffle back to where you started, and then you'd set off again. So that was, I mean, yeah, that felt like a sequence which was pretty long and involved. Yeah.
So we get onto things like when you get to find out you're working on a Star Wars film. So how do your friends and family feel? We know we've got the NDA situation. You know, how long can you talk about it and how long can you not? But how do your friends and family feel? Because, you know, it's like everything. It's, you know, once people mention those two words together, Star Wars and an actor, it's, you know, people start bowing in front of you and doing things like this. But so how do you feel? How do your friends and family feel about it?
Well, I think I think now it feels a little bit like, for them, I'm sure it feels a little bit like any other job. You know, oh, Tom's just going off to Star Wars. It's just kind of, because it's been part of my life for so long now. You know, and we feel so connected to it in that sense. I think it just feels like work to them. But I think at the beginning, I think it was, yeah, at the beginning. I mean, you know, during the Force Awakens, you know, there was so much secrecy around it. I mean, I was terrified to tell anybody. I don't think I told anybody for a long time that I was involved in it. And also, I think, also to a certain extent, I feel as though, you know, I was careful, because I think there was a sense of feeling very lucky, that I was getting to do this. And so in the wider professional puppetry circles that I was moving in at the time, I think, you know, I remember we kept it very quiet because I think there was a sense of feeling very lucky and not wanting to kind of rub it in people's faces. And also being aware again that, you know, we didn't know if we were going to make the cut, because you never know. But again, going back to my son, I think it probably means the most for him. And I think Lucasfilm did a family day on the Rise of Skywalker, and I think, you know, for years and years and years, I was, you know, I would sort of tell Henry about my work without giving away key details, because, you know, you don't want a 6, 7, 8-year-old in the playground running around going, and by the way, this is going to happen, you know. So he would know that I was going off to do these films, but I would be very careful about what I told him. But he was so excited about that, and so, and he would, of course, he would say, you know, like other kids can go and visit their parents at work, he would say, "Daddy, can I come and see where you work?" And I'd be like, I would love for you to see where I work, but I can't, you know, I don't think I can. And then I think over time, I think enough of the Star Wars film on set family, I think, were asking Lucasfilm, that I think eventually they said, okay, we're going to do this family day. And that was just like, honestly, it was truly one of the best days that I've ever had on this planet. It was extraordinary. Like, the boys were, my sons Henry and Artie were like, oh my goodness, just to see their faces, like being taken around the different sets, like being on the Millennium Falcon. They were just like, and then the cherry on the cake, of course, was that they got to have a photo with Chewbacca and R2D2, and I think BB-8 as well. But Chewie was just like, it was, you know, and there was Chewie and there was Artie, who was, you know, probably, you know, he was, you know, like literally knee high to a flea. He was so small at that time, and Chewie just kind of opened his arms, and this little boy just went, I don't know what to do, you know, and it sort of took him into this embrace, and it was honestly, it was one of the sweetest things. And yeah, I think oh yeah, that was just fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, Jonas is a really, really tall guy.
Yeah,
I've met him at an event in the Netherlands once, and he was like, "Can I hold your lightsaber?" And I was like, "How can I say no to a guy that's twice my height?"
Yeah.
So speaking of sets and visiting sets, have you ever taken anything from a set home with you? If so, what is it?
I have only taken home the memories of my time there. That would be the best thing to say, wouldn't it? Let's put it this way: if I have ever taken anything home, it's certainly never seeing the light of day.
You could have had permission to take it.
Oh. That's very true. No, actually, you know, seriously, Star Wars is, you know, I mean, I think everything is tagged. Like I remember when we did the Force Awakens, I think all the props, weapons, everything was chipped, so that if it went walkabout, it could be easily traced. No, I haven't actually. I don't think I have been in the fortunate position to ever be gifted something from a set. You know, we get lots of crew, we get crew merch, and we get crew gifts if we've worked on a film, and that's often very nice as a memento. But no, who knows? Maybe one day. So I tell you what I would have loved to have taken home with me, Mark. You'll appreciate this. So the Ponda Baba jacket was fitted to me. It was sort of cut and fitted to me, so it fit beautifully. And I remember wearing that jacket and just thinking, oh my goodness, if I could take this home with me, oh my goodness. But of course it's gone into, you know, the Lucasfilm sort of archive somewhere, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So here's a chance to ask the Lucasfilm archivists if they could please deliver the jacket to you.
yeah, just like, I wonder if there comes a certain point in which it's like lost and found, you know, you can be like, if your name's in it, can I claim it? Look, it's got my name in it. Yeah, no, sadly no, probably, but we can live in hope.
It's quite scary when you think the original films. You've got these old black and white photographs of the sort of junkyards outside of Elstree, where they've got all the old props and all the kids are playing around the props. And you'd be like, you couldn't imagine that going on today. They'd be worth absolute fortunes. There'd be a bun fight for them.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's extraordinary now. Of course, there's so much security and secrecy around these projects. But yeah, I mean, yeah, can you imagine being a kid back then and being like picking up something like a stormtrooper helmet or a blaster and just being, oh, I'll just take that home with me,
So Daisy, that's pretty much us done it, I think, isn't it? I don't know, we must be over time.
I think we both have one more question.
Go for it, you start.
Your turn.
Okay, so if I'm going to pick one question, what advice would you give for any inspiring actors or puppeteers about how to get involved with filmmakers coming up? What would you give them as advice?
So Mark, is this specifically people that want to get involved in like creature effects or that side of performance?
Yeah, I think so, because I think, we see it from a different perspective. We have the costumes, we wear the costumes. So, we'd like to think we probably share some sort of synergy with the actors because we know in some way, shape or form what you sort of go through. So for aspiring people that, maybe have come into this and see what we do and they think there's a next step into film, what advice would you give them, and certainly with your puppeteering background as well?
Yeah, so I think, the creature performance is like, it's like you're taking your base skill of acting and then you're adding a number of other complicating factors to that process. It is nerve-wracking enough to get up in front of people and perform, whether that be, in a non-performance related context, whether it be getting up at an annual meeting and delivering a speech, or just having to lead a meeting with your colleagues, or amateur dramatics, getting up and performing in front of your friends and family. It's nerve-wracking enough doing that. When you take it to a professional level, it's then taking it to that next step. But then with the creature performance, you're adding in these other elements. And so I think for me, I always talk about my journey into being comfortable working inside animatronic heads, which are not pleasant places to be. You can't see, you can't breathe very well. You've got very limited vision, and you're having to hit marks and interact with actors that can see perfectly well, as if you are that creature and you can see 2020. And for me, I always talk about it in terms of sort of diminishing kind of horizons to a certain extent. So, I started out on the stage production of Warhorse, where we were kind of encased in this wicker horse with mesh. And so, we could, in my position in the horse, I could see out of the side here. And again, with Walking with Dinosaurs, that was similar, but it was an even more limited kind of slim slit of vision that we could see on either side of the torso of the raptors or the baby T-Rex. And then from there, going into the Luggabeast, where we actually had pretty much no vision, except for we could look down and we could see our feet, but we couldn't really see what was in front of us or to the side. Right. And then going into a pullover head, and then going into animatronics. So I feel like for me, there was a graduated sort of process of getting comfortable with this. What I would say is, for anyone that wants to get involved with it, work out what that means for you. Like obviously, Mark, you're used to putting on that looks like a pullover head to me. It doesn't have any.
Yeah, it's latex, all latex.
Yeah, latex pullover. Yeah, so something like that is brilliant. If you can get your hands on something like that, and you can try it on and see how you feel inside it, that's going to give you a very good indication of whether or not this is for you. Before you even take the next step of trying to get involved, because there's a lot of luck involved in breaking in that sense. A lot of it, as is the case with any performance, it's that frustrating adage, being in the right place at the right time. which is really true. You know, but you can do a lot for yourself as well. You know, if you're really interested in this type of thing, there are movement workshops, there are things that you can get involved in. I mean, certainly the other element of that is having a good sense of your own physicality in space is super important. And that's where, you know, my background as a physical theatre performer really comes into its own, because I think you know, you have to sense, it's about sensing the space around you, and being physically confident, and being able to marry those two things together with limited vision, and, you know, all the other elements that you're kind of working with in that sense. But I think yeah, get yourself some kind of latex pullover head. That's your first step. And if you think, hey, listen, this doesn't make me want to, I'm not panicking, this doesn't make me want to scream, then think about those next steps.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
I wanted to know, you've done a lot of things outside of Star Wars as well. What's the most memorable thing you've done outside of Star Wars in terms of puppetry and creature performance?
Yeah, so yeah, I've been really fortunate. So I've done some creature performance on Doctor Who. I've done lots of VFX puppetry for the Fantastic Beast franchise, practical puppetry for the Jurassic World franchise, and I was also very lucky to do some motion capture for the middle of the new sort of trilogy of Jurassic World films, Fallen Kingdom. I got to play Blue and a number of other dinos in a motion capture setting as well. But I suppose here's a cool one to pull out of the hat. I had a great time. We did a little filler project called Battle at Big Rock, which is a little sort of short film that drops in between Fallen Kingdom and Jurassic World Dominion when Dominion comes out. And we shot that over in Ireland. And I was involved with ILM with all of the kind of the lead up to actually going out there and shooting it. So we kind of did a kind of proof of concept process with Colin Trevorrow first. And that was quite an intimate sort of process of acting in front of him and playing characters inside the scene to build this scene and work out how it was going to work. And then I was also doing creature puppetry for that scene as well. And then that graduated out to Ireland, where we actually shot the real thing. And that whole process was so fantastic, because it was very intimate, and you don't often get to have those intimate experiences on such big franchises. But we got to work very closely with Colin and had a great time. And I was out in Ireland for a few weeks, and yeah, that was a lovely little one. So that was a real fond memory outside of Star Wars.
Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for the lovely interview, and I hope you have an excellent day.
Thank you very much. My pleasure. Thanks so much for taking the time to speak to me.
Next time, maybe we'll see a Comic-Con coming up soon, if there's one of those.
Great, Mark. If we can get back and do those, that'd be amazing.
They're coming.
They're coming. Yes. Brilliant. Yeah, it'd be great. Yeah, it'd be great to see you guys in person at some point. That'd be fantastic.